Yeah, Harsha, I'm from Vizag.
Okay, so we'll start in a minute. As I told, we have covered a lot of questions, and so you are from NCRT batch 2, I think, from the WhatsApp group, the group that we have on WhatsApp.
Yes, sir.
So we have covered history here. The classes has been running for a month, I hope you know. And
Yes, sir. I know about it. Actually, I'm taking coaching over here in Vizag itself, in one of the institutes over here. So I was unable to join some of the classes.
okay, let me know the difference later when you compare the two classes. I will be keen to know
Yeah,
about
sure,
that.
sir.
So anyway, we have completed history here, but I thought that history will mean nothing, especially Indian history will mean nothing if we will not discuss about Bhagat Singh. Right? But NCRT has given a very little space to him. I think just a passing reference that there was someone like Bhagat Singh. It's such an inspiration to all of us. तो आज थोड़ा बात करते हैं भगत सिंह के बारे में. Whatever I will be teaching, I am not a PhD holder or someone who has done extensive research on history. But whatever I will be, sorry for that. Whatever I will be teaching, I will be teaching with reference to this book. I hope you all know about this. India's Struggle for Independence, written by Bipin Chandra and others. So in this book, the book itself became very controversial a few years back, and it keep coming into controversy because of one of its chapters. So we'll go to chapter number 20. The chapter says Bhagat Singh, Surya Sen, and the revolutionary terrorists. So many people said that these historians are biased towards Indian freedom fighters and they are calling them terrorists. So this is like defaming our freedom fighters. Guys, please keep yourself mute. Okay, so this was a big claim and it became very viral. I hope many of you have heard about this. Pratyush is in the class? Still not. Okay, busy with the work, I think. Anyway, so this created a lot of controversy. But if you will go through the chapter, in one of the references, I'm just quoting, the book has quoted Bhagat Singh himself. And Bhagat Singh says, what's this? I have to mute you all and take your right to unmute yourself. So, what's your opinion? Any of you? How do you think that's a good thing to say? Use the word like terrorist for our freedom fighters. Any one of you want to have any opinion on that? Good or bad? Yes or no? You can unmute yourself and if you want to say something on this. Calling our freedom fighters revolutionary terrorists. Just going through the book. Where it is. So here in on 2nd February 1931, Bhagat Singh is writing, Apparently, I have acted like a terrorist, but I am not a terrorist. Let me announce with all the strength at my command that I am not a terrorist. I never was, except perhaps in the beginning of my revolutionary career. And I am convinced that we cannot gain anything through those methods. This is Bhagat Singh talking. So as per him, he is not a terrorist, but he also says that in the initial years, perhaps he was acting like a terrorist. Terrorist, when we think of someone with many people. Today, when we will be reading about stereotypes and pre- prejudices in the later chapter. When we will start polity in the very first chapter, in the very first book. But so when we think about terrorists, our all the stereotypes and our prejudices come into the picture, and we think of terrorists like someone coming from Pakistan, wearing a skull cap, having a gun, and killing innocent people. That's the image of terrorists for us. But terrorist in literal sense means someone who wants to create terror to achieve a goal. So they were trying to create terror. They were killing people. They were throwing bombs. So they were trying to create terror, although their ideas were very pure. Their goal were uh, towards the welfare of the people, but they were using the methods of the terrorists. So that's why the term revolutionary terrorists. Anyway, just talk about this great personality, Bhagat Singh. Born in 1907. 1907 is when Congress was bifurcated into moderates and radicals. Surat split 1907. 2 years after Bengal. And as we read that after 1907, just giving a brief background, this has nothing to do with uh, Bhagat Singh. Revolutionaries after 1907 were crushed, moderates gained the power, radicals were suppressed. Just to give you an idea, why I'm telling this dates. Bhagat Singh founded an organization called Naujawan Bharat Sabha or sorry, Naujawan Bharat Sabha, Punjab Naujawan Bharat Sabha in 1926. At the age of 19 years, has created an institution about which we are reading today. I think most of us have passed that age, those who are in this class. At the age of 19 years, he was just not participating, he was creating structures to fight a communal power, uh, about which it was said at that time that their sun never sets. He was trying to fight for not just the colonialism. He was fighting communalism. He was fighting for socialism. He was fighting for equality for all. देखते हैं कैसे. So his uncle was already a very famous revolutionary, Ajit Singh, and he got his background from there. But Bhagat Singh was unlike all other revolutionaries or many of the other revolutionaries of that time. Why we remember such few names? These are the not only people who were hanged, killed, or tortured. There were lakhs of them like that. But he stands out because he was not just a revolutionary; he was a super intellectual of that time. Just 19-year, 20-year kid, and super intellectual. I've read the stories, not in this book, that he used to carry books with him all the time. He used to wear a long kurta, and in kurta, the kurta will have big pockets, and in those pockets he will be carrying books all the time, and he will be giving books to his friends or comrades all the time to read this, although they were training to fight. Hmm? Their aim was to die for the country, but he was offering them books. But पहले पढ़ो. He, you will read much more about him, and you have watched the movies, the glamour that they did. Uh, Two incidents are very important in his life. One is, about, we mentioned also, when Lala Lajpat Rai was killed, they revenged that death by killing Sanders. And one of the major incident that brought them into the limelight is when they threw the bomb into the legislative assembly. So read about that incident, and that will kind of clarify that what kind of thought, what kind of ideology Bhagat Singh had. So today, the terrorists that we know today, their main aim is to hurt as many people as they can. They target such areas, crowded places. So their choice was legislative assembly. So no common man was sitting there. No? Most of the well-known persons were there, and they threw the bomb at a empty place. And they did not run away. They surrendered themselves. Asked, "हमें गिरफ्तार करो. We are not going anywhere." And they used that opportunity to. एक बहुत famous quote है वहाँ पे. Many of you must have heard that the bomb is to awaken this government. So when the governments become deaf, you need to create some sound. So एक quote वहाँ पे use किया उन्होंने, and that was it. But finally, when he was arrested and sentenced to the death bed, he wrote a lot. He wrote many letters. ऐसा बोलते हैं ना कि फाइनल टाइम में जब कोई मरता है तो everybody remembers God. जिसको नहीं भी, even the most atheist persons create a kind of liking towards God and other such philosophical things. Just before a few weeks, when he was scheduled to hang, he wrote a letter which is now published in the form of book. Many of you will be knowing about it. Why I am an atheist. So इस बात पे पूरा he was stunned supporter that any revolutionary who have to join his group, उसको सबसे पहले रिलीजन से रिलेटेड किसी भी चीज को छोड़ के आना होगा. He made these rules very strict for his organization, that if you have any thing to do with any of the religious groups working at that time, you cannot join either Punjab Naujawan Sabha or HSRA that they created with Chandrasekhar Azad and all. Finally, he was hanged in March 1931. As I said, that if you will remember the timeline, civil disobedience movement in March 30, Gandhiji started his Dandi March, broke the SALT law. It went on for a year, and in March, just before Bhagat Singh was scheduled to or sentenced to death, Gandhi and Irwin had a pact, and Gandhiji called off the movement. Because of this, many historians, even till now, many conspiracy theorists blame Gandhiji. And even at that time, see the coincidence that he was killed. And you will remember that in 1931 we had Lahore session of Congress. So everybody was meeting in Lahore, and at that time they were declaring Pund Swaraj in 30, and in 31 they declared many other progressive rights. So Gandhiji was there. He had to go. He was the kind of all in all in Congress. So he had to go. And he faced a lot of opposition from the common man of Punjab. Everywhere he went, people saw him black flags. So just try to compare, as we read in NCRTs, when he started, Gandhiji was revered as, so in during 2021 we read the stories about people used to say that if you will say anything bad about Mahatma Gandhi, your house will fall, your crop will fail. And here in Punjab, that person was showed black flags. The pressure was so much so upon Mahatma Gandhi that and Congress that they had to put out a written letter. Till now, Gandhiji was like, I do not support this kind of revolutionary people. I do not support the path of violence and so on. But Gandhiji had to put out a letter at that time that although I still do not support that, but whatever these young revolutionaries have done, that's a great service to the nation. He had to accept that. That was the kind of popularity that Bhagat Singh and his group of people like Batukeshwar Dutt, Sukhdev, Chandrasekhar Azad has gained at that time. And they use the proceedings, तुमने movie में भी देखी होगी ये बात, the proceedings that were happening, the trial that was going on against them, they use those trials to create a mass awareness among the people about creating bombs. So at that time they wrote a book. Bhagwati Charan Verma and others of his group wrote a book called Philosophy of the Bomb. That why we are creating bomb and why we think that this is the right way. So they were not just idiotic persons who do not have any knowledge, and even they picked the gun, started killing people. They were great intellectuals of that time, well read. They knew the moral and philosophical consequences of their action, and they knew that they can justify that. But you will see a change in Bhagat Singh's attitude later in his life. So even and this time was of great turmoil. The politics of the country, the situations of the country are changing so fast that Bhagat Singh, who started with the philosophy of bomb and pistol, he himself had written at multiple places that I do not think that that's a good way to achieve independence. He himself criticized that, and he asked, so the basic idea behind creation of this Naujawan Sabha was to, again we read now in NCRT that non-cooperation was not too much positive or not too much negative. It was just the thing that can allow many of the people to participate in the revolution. So at the age of 2021 now, Bhagat Singh also gained this idea that we need a mass participation, and these heroic killings, heroic sacrifices are not for everybody. So that's why the creation of Naujawan Sabha. What Naujawan Sabha was doing? It was creating libraries. It was not creating weaponaries. ये बॉम्ब का फैक्ट्री नहीं बना रहा था. It was the aim of this society was to create as many libraries as possible in whatever areas they can. You will read. So one very good thing about this period was that people used to write letters, and some of these peoples have this great sense that these letters can become a historical document. Some are very casual too. So you will see that the kind of communication that was happening between Bhagat Singh and his group of friends, even when he was in jail, he used to write that I have read this books. I have read this book. I need these many books. This book you will get this book in that very library. So go and collect that book. And he will give some suggestions that this book should be given to all the friends, or this book will be particularly given to that very friend. So that level of intellectual, even on the death, he know that my death is certain, and is recommending books to people. That was Bhagat Singh. So he created Naujawan Sabha to gain a mass public support from the people, to create more awareness into youth about the idea of socialism. He has read a lot about and is very much influenced about by the idea of socialism. And this time you also know that two of the biggest leaders or biggest supporters of socialism in India were none other than Subhash Chandra Bose and Nehru. So they split or one of the major rifts between Congress appeared during this time of 1928 or so because of this intellectual biasness of Subhash Chandra Bose and Nehru towards socialism, and others thought that it's very dangerous for India. And Bhagat Singh was also following the same tradition, but he was a bit more radical in his approach, and that can also be because of his upbringing. जिस सोसाइटी जिस फैमिली जिस कल्चर से वो आ रहे थे, जिस सोसाइटी से जैसा उन्होंने देखा था. So his idea was to bring equality to all. Many a times he had written that colonialism or communalism is as dangerous as colonialism itself. You will remember Ambedkar was saying that even if we get independence and there is no equality between the castes, no right to the lower caste, this independence will not mean nothing. You can remember Mahatma Gandhi saying the same thing, that first we need to train ourselves for independence, then only independence will mean anything to us. And the same thing is being said by this person, although very later in his life, that the farmers should learn to protest against the landlords, to the against the money lenders, to have they have the rights, their protections against them, because it doesn't matter that who rules India, fully Britishers or Britishers with support of Indians, because by this time many of the Indians were also participating in ministries and all, or the third is completely Indians, but if the exploitation continues. So that was Bhagat Singh. And then their heroic stories and the way they conducted themselves every day when they used to. So you have seen that in the movie. That's not just the imagination of the director. And that they whenever they are entering into the court, they are singing "Mera Rang De Basanti Chola." This was the thing they used to do. Vande Mataram, Inkalab, Zindabad, Rang De Basanti Chola. They will go into the court by singing all these, and they created a great show out of it. so that all the newspapers across the country were writing about these trials, and many people come to know about their thoughts, their ideologies. ठीक है, I hope that's a good background of what I think Bhagat Singh was, and many people will have different idea about, and they might like something, some different things about him. These are the things that I like in him. अब शुरू करते हैं पॉलिटी. Anybody has any question till now? Okay, one a few more things I would like to clarify at this point about the history. We have not covered a few important chapters. Like if you will go to the chapter about the construction, the architecture of British Empire, so there are a few important things that you need to read there. I will give you the highlighted text that I give, and you should read all the things at least that I have highlighted there. Few times UPSC has asked a question that covers, that mainly relates to your syllabus of art and culture. Still, that is in the history book, so you should read it there. We have not covered class 9th NCRT, rise of Indian nationalism, because most of the things are covered here. But if you will go there, na, but try to read that. Now you know the whole story, what was happening. But in class 9th, you will read the same civil disobedience movement started with Dandi March and went on. But till now, I have taught you Dandi March with the Gandhian perspective, what our hero was doing. In class 9th, oh, sorry, in class 10th NCRT, the rise of Indian nationalism, you will, chapter number 2, you will find that who were participating, who were not participating, and such other things. So just giving you a slight background, एक दो तीन चीजें मेन आते हैं. When women participated, when were laborers participated, how was the participation from Muslims, and how was the participation from intellectuals, and you can also include how was the participation from villagers or pan India in the uh, inside of our country, hinterlands. So ये पांच चीजों पे किसने किसमें participate किया, किसने नहीं किया, that becomes a little bit important for our exam purpose. So एक एक करके मैं थोड़ा सा hint दे देता हूँ. That hint will be more than that you will read in your NCRT, but still go and read. So about women, where we read that the true women participation happened for the first time in 1930s in civil disobedience. But even before that, women were participating in 1920, 21 also women participated, although the numbers were not that huge. And they were not having this much commanding roles. In the similar fashion, you will read about the role of women in revolutionary politics. So you will read about the girls like Bina Das who sought, the person was giving him, the governor was giving him the certificate on the stage. People, women like, or revolutionaries like Kalpana Dutt and others. So you should maintain a separate seat about the participation of women in revolutionary politics and in Gandhian or other kind of movements. And this started, so in 31 they participated in large number, and in the final act in Quit India movement, they kind of took very many leadership roles. So Aruna Asaf, people like her, they were running whole radio channels on their own, played a big role in the movement. People like Sarojini Naidu was leading her own front in many parts of the country. So that's about women contribution. About Muslims, we read that in Lucknow Pact, Hindu Muslim League and Congress had a pact. क्या करना है अभी आगे. We read that in non-cooperation movement, Gandhiji united the force of Hindus and Muslim combined Khilafat movement, and it was a great success. But that alignment started declining. क्या बोले उसको? The friendship that has happened, that started declining, and in 31 we saw that the Muslims were not that much enthusiastic about civil disobedience movement, although they participated, but the number was not that big. Then coming to quit India movement, you know the kind of situation that was there. So it was completely opposite. Many of the Muslims even try to they were antagonist. पहले में full participation, second में neutral हो रहा है तो होने दो, and by the time we reach to, and we're not talking, so I'm not generalizing that all the Muslims were against the leaders like Abdul Ghaffar, the leaders like Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, they were heading the Congress in many parts of the country, and there are many others like that. They're just talking about the mass participation as a community. Okay, so in 43 it was even less. 42, 43 it was even less. And workers, the same thing happened with workers. In 2021 they thought that this is a great opportunity, we will get our rights, Swaraj will come and our wages will improve. The urban areas become the major center of the revolt or of the non-cooperation. 60,000, we read the number that 60, 70,000 workers went on strike. So big participation at that time. In 31 it slightly declined. You will in 31 you will read that in the first phase of civil disobedience movement, it was actually supported by the big businessmen, the bourgeois community. They supported the movement. They funded Congress. As I've told you, Gandhiji was very smart in arranging the funds. So they funded the movement, and they thought that this will lead to a decline in the British import. So by that time they were strong. So in First World War, Indian businessmen had gained a base, and in 30s they were able to produce the things in a large quantity, but they were not even now they were not able to compete with the British imported goods because they had to pay more taxes than the imported goods. So they thought that this revolution will help them because of the boycott and all. But this movement all started turning violent. So as you all know, if you do not know this, that business community always like a peaceful environment. Even though it's how much exploitatory it is, it doesn't matter to them. The main thing that matter is there should be a certainty. There should not be much uncertainty about business. They know that this much tax they had to pay, this much consumption will be there. There they can procure the raw materials, and there they can have their shop. So that's the main important thing for them. When the civil disobedience movement started turning violent by the time of March 1931, it suggested that there was a pressure on Gandhiji from this capitalist community that you should call up this movement now. It's not helping us; it's even harming us. So when Gandhiji went to the second roundtable conference, came back, and he started to restart the civil disobedience movement. Part two, the support of workers were less, the support of capitalists also decreased. But support of work and behind this decline of support of workers was another reason. That reason was by this time this socialist Marxist became very active. So their idea, they were specifically talking about workers. If you will read a bit about Marxist ideology, socialist ideology, you will come to know that their main basic plank is this workers, laborers. So they were much more in their support. later they came, but now the strength has been divided. But in 1943, it was a very widespread movement, and everybody participated. Even the communists at that time supported the "do or die" slogan of Gandhiji, and everybody participated. So again, the workers and everybody participated in Quit India movement. Um then women हो गया, workers हो गया, capitalist हो गया, peasants and all. You know about, they participated whenever Gandhiji called. So they were like, "Chale chalo." In the third part, in the third act, or in the third revolution, Quit India movement, the participation was much more violent than all others. That's it. You will come to know about it. Ninth wala padho, thoda standard book padho, so you will get a better idea about all these things. Uh, our main aim today is polity. 6:39. Let us take a break of 5 minutes and let's come and we will start the polity of race. 10 minutes का break ले लेते हैं, and it's 40, so we will come back at 50. We will come back at 6:50 and we will start polity. 6:50. I'm ending this now.